The speaker is actually carefully selected, and it's no other person than Oluwatoyin Purikon. She's a medical student turned HR professional. That's quite interesting. After discovering connection between her natural abilities and career fit, and the negative consequences of a mismatch. Now she recruits, she teaches, she trains and coaches budding and established professionals to discover the careers that align with their natural talent. She developed their competencies through fit-for-purpose capacity development, capacity building programs, and leverage that to demonstrate their capacity in the workplace. Toyi is an international certified senior professional in human resources, and that was issued by the HR. She's an associate member of Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria. She's also an associate member of the Institute of Professional Recruitment Consultants, Nigeria. And she has a project management certification from Project Management Certification or College in the UK. She's passionate about fitting right talent with right roles. She partners with organizations using a multi-pronged approach via multi-channels, including e-networking platforms like LinkedIn, to acquire quality talent and harness their skills optimally to achieve business objectives. She has succeeded in doing this with multiple sectors, including consulting, insurance, and broadcast media across the 6 geopolitical zone in Nigeria. She has also done this in an advisory capacity within West Africa and the United Kingdom. Toyi co-developed competency framework and career map. She once designed interview scoring model and candidate assessment process. She designed and executed graduate trainee assessment center, a first for our organization. She has implemented a structural change for the organization from a departmental to a team-led, project-led employee engagement initiatives. She has implemented HR lifecycle from entry to exit for different organizations. She designed a curriculum and crafted in-house faculty for a training academy. She developed processes and procedures for seamless implementation of HR best practices. She published the Talent Guide newsletter, featured 6 times in LinkedIn and newsletters to explore. Toyi, she's the founder of what she calls Toyi Talks Talent 3T. And in doing that, she has supported over 30 career professionals with jobs and promotion. She has also delivered training sessions and facilitated sponsorship to developmental programs. Her skills and competencies are in talent acquisition and management, people, process and stakeholder management, strategy design and implementation, learning and development, performance and reward management, and finally, succession planning. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome today to today's session, Oluwatoyin Purikon. Thank you very much. Oluwatoyin, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Happy International HR Day to us all. I celebrate each and every one of us here because we know that our job is a very pivotal one within the organization, and sometimes it's a thankless one. So I celebrate you all, and I wish you continued strength and grace to do what you do best by supporting your organizations and the people that we serve. I believe you can hear me. I think Wilhelm responded to me, so
yes, very clearly.
Yes, fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, so this is me. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, dear colleagues. There are some people that I'm familiar with here. Good evening, everyone, members of the C3 network, but also here. Good evening. Good evening, my seniors, my peers, my colleagues. It's such a pleasure to be here today, and I'm quite excited. We have a lot to go through. When I was asked to anchor this session, I considered it quite an honor because the subject of values is not a light one. We all embrace one value or the other, and we do all believe that we have values. So for someone like me to be chosen for this, I would like to believe that there was something that was recognized, and I do not take this for granted at all. So I wish to say a very big thank you to the leadership team at AEHRP. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Now, having done the protocol, I'm going to relax a little bit because I know that I'm in great company. I'm among people, my colleagues, and we all know the things that we face every day as HR professionals, both the trials and the triumphs. And I think the celebration today is well deserved. I believe I can share my screen so that I can get into it.
Yes, please.
So, thank you very much. All right, so just give me a second here. Please kindly let me know in the chat room when you can see my screen. The lead is still loading, and that's the feedback I'm getting here. Please, can you see my screen now?
Yes, please, it's up.
Fantastic. Okay, like I said, there's quite a bit to get through, and I'll do my best to make it an engaging session. I am going to request that we all participate because I intend for it to be an interactive one, all right? Because like I said, values are not things that we are unfamiliar with. We all have our values. Okay, so these are the areas we're going to be running through this evening. Because it's quite vast, I'm going to be talking through some things. I'm happy to make the slides available afterwards for everyone to access. But I'm going to talk you through some things. I'm going to be emphasizing a few things, and I'm going to be needing you to give me some feedback on some areas. I believe that is okay. So when we get into the subject of values in leadership, I'd like us to first say in the chat room, if you are going to organize your core values, like your personal values, into your top 3 personal values, can you let me have it in the chat room, please? What are the top 3 values that you will say you hold dear to yourself? Top 3. Can I have people writing in the chat room? Top 3 values. I love for people to excellence. Okay, fantastic. I have someone to excellence, integrity, loyalty, honesty, proactiveness, commitment. Can I have a couple more? I'm liking what I see. Authenticity, excellence, integrity, honesty, loyalty. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. In the service of time, I'll move on from here. And I know the one that a lot of us tend to honor the most or prefer is integrity. And I also hold integrity as one of my values. But I've learned pretty recently that a value is truly a value when it's been tested and you still stick to it. So if your value hasn't been tested, then you may want to ask yourself, is this really a value for me? What happens when there's nothing else but me and this value? Would I still choose it? Which is why someone like John Maxwell would say, your values are the soul of your leadership and they drive your behavior. The soul is not something that you can touch, you can handle, but it's something that you know is there and it manifests in behavior. If you come to a point where you're asked to deliver on something, will that value shine out, so to speak? Another thing we need to know about values are that we can pick a value like excellence, for instance. And what excellence means to me is different from what excellence means to you. So we can say that to a degree, values can evolve. And evolution doesn't necessarily mean that they change all the time, even though sometimes they can change. But it means that the depth to which you practice that value begins to increase. So you can have someone at the entry level say one of their values is excellence, and they deliver on the job. But someone else who is more experienced delivers excellence on the job, and there is a vast difference between the entry level person and the experienced person. So your values can deepen based on your experience, based on your exposure. They serve as a moral compass and they influence decision making and setting ethical practices and standards for an organization. Now, one of the things that is very interesting about values, and I know we all have them individually, and our companies have them. We have our core values, which we display on our office premises. The truth is that you cannot give what you don't have. At an individual level, if you claim something as a value, then people should be able to point to it and say, yes, this person is a person of excellence. This person has integrity. This person is very proactive. This person is very compassionate. This person cares about people's well-being. People can testify that you have that value because you demonstrate it. So we know values are something that are fundamental to us. They are not things we can handle and touch, but things that manifest in behavior. We know that values drive our decision making, and we know that values are things that people see us demonstrate. Values in leadership, in particular, are critical because they determine the type of leader you want to be, how you want to lead the people you influence, how you make your decisions, who you allow to influence you, and that's very important. It goes to that adage that says, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. It is assumed that the people that you surround yourself with share values with you, and then whether or not you become a better leader. Now, when we talk about values in leadership, there is an understandable tendency for us to think about top management within an organization. But leadership starts first with the individual. Everyone, at whatever stage you are in your career life cycle, has to learn to lead yourself first before you can lead anyone else. So you may not be a manager now, you may not be a director now, you may not be a business owner now, but you are certainly someone who's capable of leading yourself. And I dare say that as children, people grow from childhood to adulthood. One of the things that makes us believe that they are mature is because they're able to be disciplined and lead themselves. So now, a lot of us have identified what we believe are personal values. Now, and I believe that this extends to our professional values as well, even though there are slight distinctions between them. They're not different. One just is more focused in some certain areas than the other. So how do you identify them, or how did you identify them, as I said? You identify them by recognizing what things matter most to you, really. Which is why when rubber hits the road, you begin to ask yourself, okay, is it this or this? I heard a case study, a video that I watched about a certain gentleman that had a business in manufacturing cotton t-shirts. And he was a very, very, very big environmentalist. One of his values was care for the environment, right? And it turned out that within his processes, the way the t-shirts were manufactured were actually causing harm to the environment. And so he had to take a look and ask himself, okay, what do I do? Do I continue making these t-shirts in a way that generates profit for me? Because if it was to manufacture the t-shirts in a more organic way, it was going to be very, very much more expensive. It was going to cut into his profits. It was going to reduce dividends for the shareholders. It was even actually going to even, it was going to sort of distort the business model he had. So it was a question of, so what do I do? Do I continue manufacturing the way I've been manufacturing, where I'm making money for myself, I'm making money for my shareholders, or do I embrace my environmental side and decide to do it in this way so that I can remain true to my value, care to the environment? And he had a partner, he discussed it with his partner, and of course the partner was like, what, are you crazy? We can't do this, because if we do this, it's going to affect our business in this way and whatever. Eventually, he decided to stick with the previous model of manufacturing and not change the environmentally friendly model, because ultimately the other people, his stakeholders, needed things to move a certain way despite his personal values. And that conflict was one he had to deal with for the rest of his business life. I don't know how it ended because the person sharing the story didn't say. But there are times when we have to decide what matters most to us. And sometimes it matters to us because other people are involved and not just us. And then sometimes, whether or not people are involved, it matters more that we adhere to some certain values. And so these things are in context. So values also can be contextual. A lot of us embrace some of these values at childhood. I'm sure we can all think about or remember some story our parents told us at one point or the other, that we learned never to do something or the other again because so XYZ son got into trouble by doing this, doing that, or the other. Some of us demonstrated some values at home because we knew that the consequences of not demonstrating those values were going to be very detrimental to our way of living. I don't know about you, but I knew that if I did some certain things when I was younger, my father was going to, in my imagination at the time, kill me. So it wasn't because I was trying to be a good girl, but say it was because I knew the consequences of my being a bad girl. All right. But we get our personal values mostly by what is modeled to us. So what do we see? And we know that children learn mostly from seeing what their parents do. What do we see? And then we need to flip that around and ask ourselves, what are we showing to others? What values are we saying we have? Are we walking the talk, so to speak? We've talked about examples, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. Now, in terms of our professional values, the guiding beliefs and principles that influence our work behavior. They shape our work ethic, define our ideal professional environment. So for instance, we're going to talk later about aligning our personal and professional values. You can decide, for instance, that because you're someone who embraces excellence as a value, one of the ways you want that manifested is that within your career, you're only going to work with premium brands. You're going to go, if you're going to be consulting, you're going for the big four. If you're going to be a manufacturer in FMCG, you're going for the top players there. And then you are shaping your behavior and shaping your learnings, shaping your networking based on that, okay? That is when you begin to identify what your professional values are. And consequently, you're of course more likely to gravitate towards organizations that share your values, right? So if you're someone who is very big on corporate social responsibility, giving to others, you may likely be attracted to an organization that has a strong CSR department, unit, or strategy, okay? It helps you, like I said, be intentional in your career search and use those values to shape your path forward. These are some examples of professional values. I'm certain some of us have this in our vision, mission, core value statement. Some of them are there. Now, if we look at the relationship between values and leadership, I mean, we've talked about that already to an extent, but it is so integral to the way we run our organizations. I don't think a lot of us understand how integral, and I found that with myself and in my experience in HR, that to a great extent, a lot of us apply the values more personally than professionally. Now, I'm not saying that we don't apply them professionally, and I'll explain what I mean a little later. But sometimes we don't see that value through to the end. Sometimes it may be due to no particular fault of ours entirely, because obviously we're not a one-man team or one-man department. They're different people, different backgrounds, different belief systems, and we have to work cohesively towards an objective. So you can find some gaps there. And that is where I think the ball is dropped sometimes within the organization. Now, it's easy to say, oh, like why I would say, and this is completely true, that transformational HR is impossible without inspirational leadership. And the truth is that values must be driven from the top for them to have any great or lasting impact within the organization and on its culture. However, there is a measure of control that we as individuals have over how we demonstrate the values we profess on the job. And that is where it comes to how do we align our personal, professional, and organizational values. First, we have to start at the top, right? Now, I have to say that one of the gaps I think that we have is that a lot of organizations, when we hire, we wait for the hires to join before we start talking to them about our core values. And then we expect them to align, obviously, because, you know, they're joining our organization, you should know. But have we thought to ask ourselves, do we incorporate our values into the hiring process? For example, we say that our value is excellence. Let's use excellence, for example. And then the process of hiring new staff comes with a lot of gaps, right? We have a process that we need to go through, let's say a 5-6 step process. And we skip some steps in the process. Not that we run some things concurrently to save time, because we know nowadays that because of talent shortage, we can't afford to take time to close up any recruitment processes. But we do it because maybe we feel we're so familiar with the job, or because we're intimidated by the hiring managers or the top management. And we, rather than, you know, play our role as a consultant to the business to advise them on how things ought to be done, we sort of allow things to go a certain way because we feel it's less trouble to do that than to maybe stand our ground or vocalize what needs to be done. And I'm saying this with every sense of responsibility because I know that it's contextual and I know it's, you know, organization to organization process, but it varies from organization to organization. But we need to ask ourselves honestly, for those of us who have honesty as a value, do we play that consulting role as we should, as people who embrace excellence as a value? Or do we allow things to slide because it's easier and then we also want to make up time? And as custodians of culture, HR professionals, part of our role is to reinforce the core values sometimes to the leaders. Because if we have been given the task to be culture custodians, leaders sometimes tend to be more focused on the strategic side of things and not so much on how their decisions impact the culture. And this is where we step in. So if excellence is truly a value, this is what it means, that sometimes we have to remind leadership or collaborate with leadership, because sometimes they do need our support in that area, to ensure that the values that we espouse are demonstrated in all our interactions with the employees. Because the truth is, if the leaders of the company do not appear to believe and exhibit company values, the employees won't either. And as unfair as it may seem, HR tends to be within the organization the firstborn, so to speak, the one that is supposed to show the others how to get things done. So more is required from us. We have to follow all the policies to a T. Whatever leadership says, we are the ones that have to demonstrate it to a T. We are the ones who have the emotionally intelligent, even when our colleagues are being, possibly rude and disrespectful to us. We are the ones who have to smile and reassure when our own pockets are also suffering from the lack of salary increase. We are the ones who have to put a positive spin on things when people come and complain about how the organization isn't doing what it should. It's a lot, which is why HR is not for the faint-hearted, and which is why I think we totally deserve to be celebrated on World HR Day. Okay, it seems unfair, but it's the job, isn't it? And we, as leaders, like I said, we're like the firstborn of the organization. We need to authentically embody the core values that we want in our organization, that we want in our teams, and that we want even in our leadership. Because as we all know, sometimes the leadership doesn't demonstrate those core values. And then we now have to become their mirror to show them what it is that they are really aspiring towards. Okay? When employees understand the value sets, they have a clearer path of how to perform their jobs. So leadership must first know the core values and their ramifications. And I don't mean just reel them out. If we have 4, we can list the 4. If we have 10, we can list the 10. You have to understand how far it goes, what it means to recruitment, what it means to employee relations, what it means in terms of training and development, what it means in terms of compensation benefits. What do those core values mean in all across the HR value chain? We have to know them. Then we have to model those values. Now, like I said, I'm speaking both to leadership and to us as HR professionals, because where leadership doesn't do what it should, HR needs to do what it can, right? We model those values, communicate the values. And one thing my boss always says is that we have to tell our stories. We have to tell them truthfully. We have to tell them consistently, right? So that people recognize that while things are not where they need to be, they're not, one, where they are coming from, and 2, they're actually not as bad as we think they are. And we have to celebrate those employees who model the values that we have. And this doesn't have to be at the leadership, level. I know my organization, every quarter, we recognize someone to receive the CEO award. So it's something that we all look forward to, town hall meeting, who gets the CEO award. But do you know that you can have an employee of the month within your team? If you're like an HR leader here, director or a manager or someone, you can decide to reward one member of your team who exemplified a core value. Institute that award. You could make it something as simple as a movie ticket or a small financial gift or lunch treat. But it serves a dual role of encouraging the staff members in question, but also reinforcing those values that you want demonstrated among your team. The second thing that has to happen is you have to align employee engagement to values through recognition. And one of the challenges a lot of staff have with their management is that they feel very disconnected from what leadership is doing or direction leadership is going. I've heard that for many, many years now, and it appears based on this report or this research that is still the case, right? So recognizing and celebrating those employees that demonstrate your values becomes not just something nice to do or something for employee engagement purposes. It becomes crucial to perpetuating your values within your organization because it will inspire others to do the same. Last year, we instituted an initiative called Service Champions. We did that, made it coincide with the Customer Service Week. You know, we have that October every year. So we decided to identify individuals within each department that we can call service champions, the people who are the team players, the people who are always ready to help, the people who go above and beyond. And what made it wonderful is that we actually asked the team members themselves to nominate the person. So this wasn't like a top-down thing where HR came and said, oh, this is your service champion, or leadership came and said, oh, this is service champion. The team members themselves nominated the service champion, so that by the time these people were being called out to receive their awards and their gifts, you know, they were, you know, resounding, you know, clapping, cheering, and, you know, because these were their own selections. These weren't people that were foisted on them. These were people that they chose themselves and recognized those traits in them. So such people need to be publicly recognized and mentioned, you know. Maybe your company-wide communication. In my company, we have what we call Channel One, where we show, you know, such things. So if this person is a service champion, we'll show you on Channel One and say, well done for being a service champion, and everybody gets to see it. Can you imagine how that staff would feel? You know, walking by the screen and just seeing their smiling face there saying Service Champion 2022 or Service Champion 2023. It would be, I mean, there's this sense of the way they attack the work is like, yeah, I want to continue doing this, right? So mentions, rewards, and of course promotions, of course, which also, you know, is because it's a performance, they get, you know, promotions based on your criteria, right? Let's move on. Then 3, evaluate, redefine, and adapt values on a regular basis. And I'm going to start moving a little faster now if you permit me. People tend to ask, you know, if something is really a value, if you're changing it, was it a value in the first place? And the truth is that the values, or what you call values for every organization, depends on what their strategic thrust is. And I'm going to demonstrate that with an example of a brand that we are all familiar with. This is First Bank. As we all know, this is not the logo that we are all seeing now. It's different. It's something different we're seeing now. But I'll ask you, when you see this logo, what words jump into your mind immediately? Let this be an organic thing. Just you know, say in the chat room what comes to your mind. Or you can, I don't know if we can unmute, or just to make things faster. In the chat room, what would you say comes to your mind when you see this old logo? Big, strong, reliable. Okay, we have is that an 80s or a 90s person here? No, I think Big, strong, reliable was Union Bank, or not First Bank, but it's okay. I understand. An elephant is big, is strong, reliable, fantastic. You see, my fellow people there said it's Union Bank. All right, but what does this? Let me have maybe two more. What does it say to you when you see it? Yes, their slogan was actually truly the first. They were trading on their age, how long they've been in business. Anyone else? Heavy. That's a very thought-provoking one. When you say heavy, that suggests, like, you know, slow, doesn't it? When you say something is heavy, you can't carry something that is heavy and move very fast. But however, it's saying strength, stability, massive, fantastic. These are positive things. But there's also, yeah, there's some negative connotations as well. But these are generally positive things. But I think we can all testify if you've had a First Bank account before, or even hold one now, that sometimes you feel that heaviness, when you're working with them. You don't get things as speedily done as you wanted to. And though I think this is a characteristic of most banks, even though some are distinguishing themselves to be different, they tend to be very process driven because of the nature of their business. And sometimes that makes them very, 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 drag things, possibly unnecessary. But I'm being very, 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 very nice about that. Okay, now, this is their new logo, the one we are now familiar with. Person who opened the First Bank account, it was a salary account. It was a salary account. I don't know. I think I opened, somebody asked me in the chat room who opened it for me. I think it was this idea that I had was because First Bank was such an old bank and has proven itself over the years to be steady, that it was a good idea to have First Bank account. So I think that's the reason I opened it at the time. So you see, that the longevity, stability thing drew me in. Now, this is their new logo. Now, what does this say to you? Does this inspire anything in you when you look at this new logo? I'm looking at the chat room now, and here I have some people. What does this say to you? What does this say anything to you? Does it inspire any sort of word? Agility, because the movement, I think, yeah. Agility. Okay, it says agility to you. I don't know if there's any First Bank people here. Please be listening to these things. Modern, oh, fantastic, contemporary, moving forward, continuity. Ronke, I'm really sorry for your experience with First Bank. Please, if there's any HR for First Bank or anybody that works with First Bank, please, Ronke Patrick, she needs to be delighted, okay? All right, so thank you so much. I'm very, very interested in your perspective on this logo. Now, this is the two logos side by side. And this on the left or the right, so on my right, is what First Bank themselves are saying about their new logo and why they changed it. And it's interesting to see that their slogan changed from truly the first to you first. So as good as stability and longevity is or was, the truth is that they were self-focused. We are focused on how long we've existed, the fact that we are the first bank in Nigeria, we've had a track record and all that. So it was in a way self-focused. But now they're saying we want to be customer-focused. So they changed their value to be you first. That's you, the customer first, and not we, the bank first. Even though our intention is to serve you, we are telling you now outrightly that it's you first, which is why you see that the First Bank is in front of the elephant, as opposed to it being beneath. So they're saying that the head is now raised because with First Bank in your corner, you will face every financial challenge with your head held high. Isn't that fantastic? They switched to a deeper blue color that represents a heritage of trust and distinction. They introduced the gold color to their new identity as a representation and a promise of the gold standard of value and excellence in banking services that you can always expect from First Bank. The foot is now raised as a reminder, that's the front foot is to the front and not to the back as it was before, as a reminder that they will always put their best foot forward for you, the customer. Now, this is an aspiration, obviously. They may not have entirely reached the space yet, but it had to change their values and what they believed was important in their business practices. And in those cases, in that particular case, I should say, they evaluated their values, they had to redefine it based on what they wanted to achieve, and they had to adapt to what the customer now wanted. So in cases like this, you can change your value based on the outcome that you desire. Now, steps to articulating your own values, because we've said these are values we espouse. So like I said, I'm going to send these slides. So if you want to go through this stepwise process, kindly help me with that microphone that it's a bit distracting, sorry. I'm going to send this. So you will want to go through this exercise and actually reflect, self-reflect, that's like First Bank self-reflected, and identify which values really matter to you, right? Write them down. Consider the people you most admire, the people that you gravitate towards, the people that you tend to attract, and the people that attracts you. That is actually quite important, right? Why do you like this person? What is it about this person that you admire? It may have something to do with the kind of values that they hold. Consider your experiences, and then you can rate them, group them, rank them, and then you now know which ones are your true values and what you prefer to be known by. One of the essences of the 360-degree feedback is when you get other people's perspective about your performance. It'll be interesting to know if you ask a couple of people, if you were to describe me, what are the first things that you say about me? Think through how these values should impact your behavior and align them by forming new habits. What this means is that if I'm espousing a particular value and the habits or the actions or behaviors I demonstrate routinely and instinctively do not align with the values I'm saying are my values, then I have to question whether or not they are my values. Let's say, for instance, integrity, because that is one that many people mentioned in the chat room. And I have to confess, I'm one of the integrity people. But what does integrity look like in the workplace? Is it just me being true to myself? Because some people define integrity just like that. I'm true to myself. But when you say you're a person of integrity, what does that mean in the workplace? An example could be you show up on time and you work your hours. Some of us don't show up to work on time. We are supposed to resume at 8, we show up at 8:30. Yes, traffic, but do you know that if you leave your house earlier, you can actually get to work on time? And I think there is a way that the things around us tend to align when we are determined and focused on achieving a goal. I'm sure there's a phenomenon, there's something it's called, but it's the power of the laser, right? When you're focused on something, it's strong enough to sort of deal with every other thing that will be preventing you from achieving that goal. Do your assigned task or work and don't pass it off to a colleague. Now, this doesn't mean asking for help when you need it or teamwork. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that some people are happy to push an assigned task to a colleague, maybe because they don't want to do it or they're uncomfortable with it, right? But is that really integrity? You need to ask yourself. Adhere to deadlines or request for extensions where necessary. And I will say, because I've experienced this recently, imagine someone, okay, let's even address this one first. You have a deadline. I'm sure I've done this before, maybe not intentionally, but if I'm saying that integrity is my value, then I need to pay attention to this. If I miss a deadline, maybe because I was distracted doing something else, and I feel, oh, I have a good reason for missing this deadline, it doesn't mean I still shouldn't go back to let the person who is expecting something from me know that I am really sorry for ABCD reason, I cannot meet this deadline. Can I extend it to this new date? Will that work for you? Or can we agree on a new date that I can submit this thing? Or if it's that important, then I need to prioritize that and put those other distractions to the side, or have someone else help me deal with those. Do we do that? Or are we like the person I invited for interview at 1 o'clock that now sent me an email at almost 2 o'clock apologizing that they wouldn't be able to make the interview at 1 o'clock? Oh, that's fast. And can we reschedule? What does that say about the person? If you have something for 1 and you can't make it for 1, then I imagine that I should be told before 1, not almost an hour later. Do you see what I mean? If you have integrity, you should be able to keep your appointment or keep your promises, and don't make promises you can't keep. Okay? Transparency, right? Now, this is different from information management, because I know as HR professionals, confidentiality is one of our pillars. There are things that we don't say because we shouldn't or we don't need to. That is different from being dishonest. Okay? So let's not bend the truth because we're trying to keep confidence. At the very worst, say, you know what? There are things I can't really share right now. However, be assured that A, B, C, D. And when you talk to staff like that, you tend to you're trusted because they know you say it as it is, and you will not say what you shouldn't say, right? Then take responsibility for your actions, set a good example, lead by example. So these are ways that you can demonstrate integrity in the workplace, if truly integrity is a value that is one of your core values. All right. Now we're going to talk about values-based leadership. Wow, I'm looking at my time, so I'm going to have to move it faster. So the CEO is not in charge of the company. The values are, says Dave Logan. If at the end of our careers we've not passed along positive values, then we have abdicated our leadership role. So the same way someone like John Maxwell will say leadership is influence, this gentleman will say leadership is values. Okay? Values-based leadership is both a leadership style and philosophy that builds on the shared beliefs and assumptions of the leader and the team, right? So it's not something you can do by yourself as a leader. It's one thing for me to have my values, and that's fine. But if I'm going to be a values-based leader, the people I'm leading must also understand that these are my values and they're going to be incorporated into the work that I do. Okay? Because it needs to be a shared philosophy, doesn't it? It can't be just someone doing something and then other people just, wondering what your motivations are. And it's particularly powerful if the motivations are a shared one. And you know that you and your team can share values, right? You have collective visions, right? In terms of, these are the objectives we want to attain as a team. The same way you can share values. And when you craft these values together, and I'm going to talk about it, there's a video I wanted to show, but I may come back to that piece because of the time. You have to create that as a culture. When you share those values, then everyone has an equal responsibility to live according to the values. So first of all, revise your existing values, right? Okay, this says involve the organization. That's if you're coming from the place of leadership of the organization, like top management. But as a leader within a team, involve your team, right? Interpret how that value is relevant to each member of the team. So if you are in a shared HR system where somebody handles each area of the value chain, you can talk about what this value we are sharing looks like in your own job, right? So as an L&D person, for instance, what does integrity look like? Possibly there's a vetting system for your vendors, the people that offer training to your organization. So the person who handles L&D cannot bring his own person and say, let's just use this person. The person will also need to pass through whatever criteria that you have laid out in your organization. If the person is truly as good as they're supposed to be, then they should pass with flying colors. So that integrity would have been embraced or encapsulated within the L&D function, right? Offer values-based leadership training. Consistently talk about what your values are, why they are, and the benefits of embracing those values. The what's in it for me. The people you lead have to know what is in it for them to embrace these values. If they cannot see that, then the likelihood of them embracing it or perpetuating it becomes lower. Then coach your team leaders. Now, this is like at the organizational level, or even be an HR director and you have various teams under your ambit. You coach them, because if these people don't have a buy-in to your values, then they're not going to ensure that the people that they are managing do it as well. And it has to be communicated consistently. Then finally, lead by example, model what you expect, and tie your actions and decisions to the values that you espouse. Value communication strategies within the team, because we talked about communication throughout here, how you have to continually communicate. Use an engaging format. I mentioned that in my organization, we have a channel, we call it channel 1 anyway. So we have monitors dedicated to internal communication. So we have different ways sometimes to make it, just make it look beautiful and catchy. We engage our corporate communications team. So people actually want to watch, they want to see. Talk about what works and what doesn't. Use storytelling to share your experiences. You can say this to everyone. Talk about where you're coming from, your before and after stories. It's great for people to see that, so that they know that things, however bad you feel things are, is better now. That's essentially it. Yeah, or that it used to be worse before. So telling our before and after story also reinforces the values that we embrace. Fully incorporate the values into your brand, your logo, your slogan, and especially how you engage with the public, right? Because nowadays we know that talent is attracted to our stories. So now every organization is now like a content creator, so to speak. We're not just doing it so that they'll say we're there. We're doing it because we want people to know who we are and want to work with us, right? Tie each value to the job description. And I think even I believe that I can do a better job in doing that. How much of your values is incorporated into the job descriptions that you give to people you want to hire, right? Because it should form part of your job description. It should form part of your interview process. It should form, part of your onboarding process. It should be fully integrated into every aspect of your organizational practices. Because once it is done, people can't avoid it. They see it everywhere, so they know they have to align. Use dedicated content and guidelines. I think we've already spoken about that earlier. Leverage virtual engagement, and nowadays we know that is very, very possible. Create like a workshop. Use your avenues, like maybe your Monday meeting, your weekly meeting, your monthly meeting, your bi-monthly meeting, to talk about a value. You may choose to spotlight the value, or you may choose to use that value as a basis for particular, training or message or strategy, right? But it's still part of this, incorporating it into everything. And of course, you reinforce by being consistent. I'm sure you have many other suggestions of how this can be done. Look at what can work. And it's baby steps, because I know a lot of us have challenging, top management. So let's start from our areas of control before we move to our areas of influence, right? Now, integrating values into decision-making processes. You need to be clear about what those values are. There's always a good start with the end in mind, as my boss will always say. Of course, we all know is one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. It's one of the things that she she does very consistently. Start with the end in mind. Align your brand with your values, because your core values need to be reflected in your brand proposition, your brand messaging. Make value-based decisions a team effort. Obviously, it's not everything you have to run by your team as a leader, because you have to take some unilateral decisions sometimes. However, when you can, and they are part of that decision-making process, they can clearly see how the values are incorporated into it. Make business values your personal values. You may have your own personal values, but you can now use the business values also, because if you believe in what you do, you can make your business values your personal values as well. Add your values to your decision-making process as an individual, and then tell others about it. Tell others about your values. Let them know, people within, people without, let them know what it is that your company believes. Because the more they're able to identify with the company, the more they'll want to work with your company, and you'll have fewer challenges in attracting talents to organization. Then continually re-examine your values. If you remember the first bank story, how they had to take a step back and understand that they were putting the people that they claimed to want to serve were not as forward, they were not as customer forward as they thought they were, and they had to take another look at yourself. Now, we're coming towards the end now. The role of values in promoting ethical behavior. Now, when we talk about values and ethics, we tend to believe that it's the same thing, but there are slight differences, right? Because ethics refers to guidelines for conduct that addresses questions of morality. When you call something a work ethic, you believe that you are accountable to someone or to something for maintaining or consistently demonstrating that particular value, right? Sometimes values, they're just ideas or principles, and you make a judgment about what is important. Recall the story I said about the guy who had this, value of environmental, loving the environment, and then, making his shareholders happy. If this thing was a moral thing, like maybe you're a Christian or you're a Muslim, and you believe God, according to your belief that God would abhor this particular behavior, it wouldn't matter to you if your shareholders were going to lose. You'd rather step down, right? That would be the difference between your ethics and your values. It's your ethics tend to be consistent. You don't change, on those things. Your values, like as we've shown, can change based on context or what your strategic direction is. So there are slight differences between ethics and values. And while values are great, I think if you dig down deeper, ethics are where you want to get to. But the thing about ethics is that it's because it's fundamental to each individual. You have to recognize that not everybody shares your ethics, and then you have to navigate your way through the organization because of that. Now, ethics are important because ethical behavior demonstrates a strong moral code and a consistent set of values. You are less likely to change your value system when it becomes an ethical consideration for you. Even though, like we've mentioned and we've seen, values can change based on strategic direction, but when it's a question of ethics or morals, they're not likely to change, right? So an organization that displays good ethical behavior can boost company morale and client relations, leading to all these beautiful things that we love to see in HR: employee retention, increased employee performance, job satisfaction, organizational commitment, and a high trust index for the management, and of course, organizational citizenship behaviors, at which point it's not about whether or not they're doing it because the company says they should do it, they're doing it because they are compelled to do it. That is when your employee becomes an organizational citizen. So there are times when there are conflicts of interest, when you are embracing a particular value system or you are clinging to a particular ethic. And I have a case study here. I think we can take 1 or 2 minutes to discuss it. And I'd like to read it out and have people, make their comments in the chat room. Or I don't know if William, whether we can, or I think if people can unmute and speak. But here it is. So a woman is sexually harassed by a top-level senior executive in a large company. She sues the company, and during settlement discussions, she's offered an extremely large monetary settlement. In the agreement, the woman is required to confirm that the executive did nothing wrong. And after the agreement is signed, the woman is prohibited from discussing anything about the incident publicly. Now, before the date scheduled to sign the settlement agreement, the woman's lawyer mentions that she has heard the executive has done this before, and the settlement amount is very large because the company probably had a legal obligation to dismiss the executive previously. The company, however, wants to keep the executive because he's a big moneymaker for the company. So, having read this, what are the issues of integrity, ethics, and law posed in the case study? What options does the woman have? What should she do and why? If you were HR, how would you advise her? But I don't know if people can.
So the way we do it is so that it's not rowdy. Whoever wants to speak should raise a hand, and then they will be recognized one after the other. So that makes it very easy for us to coordinate. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I think I may have clicked something. Oh, I wanted to open the attendance. So that's what you guys have seen. Please give me a minute. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to reshare the
while she's doing that,
yeah, so let's think about it. If you have something to say about it, please raise your hand. What do you think? How would you advise the woman, either as HR or as her friend? What would you say she should do? Yeah, so this is a case study. Please read through and let me know what you think she should do, or what you think, how you advise as HR. What would you think? What's your opinion? I know it's a dicey one. And I think I can say that some people may have actually faced this sort of thing one way or the other in their company. Maybe it wasn't a case of sexual harassment. Maybe it was some other case where, in order to protect a particular personality within the company, they needed to make some things go away, and we've had to handle that. So, but in this case study, what are the issues of integrity, ethics, and law posed? What do you think? What do you think this person can do? I don't know if anybody's raising their hands.
Okay.
Okay, I have somebody who wants to talk.
Yes. Please go ahead,
okay,
please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Idonia Maya. I'm actually, yes. It's a very dicey situation, number one. There are a lot of issues here. Should the lady go for monetary settlements? The question is, where lies her value? That means her values can be bought with money. That is one. Then number two, if she decides to also take the monetary settlement, she is inadvertently exposing other people to the same treatments. Because if you keep quiet, it means that other people will also be a victim, because the man or the person that is perpetrating the evil will see, oh, after all, we can always settle our way through, and he will be more emboldened to continue his evil deed. So the question, so that will not be a moral burden on that woman, because other people that will be victimized based on her inability to speak out, it will be a moral burden on her. Then for the company, it's also a negation of value by covering up evil. That is where the law speaks, because they are not covering up a clearly evil deed just because of what they stand to gain as an organization. So there is a moral burden on both the victim, then the perpetrator of the evil, and also the company as a whole. See, that is my view.
So what would you advise her to do?
She has to speak out. If she doesn't speak out and accept the monetary settlement, fine. Several people has done way. They will say, okay, after all, you've been victimized. So I don't know where her morality will be if maybe days or years to come, other people will continue to be victim to the man's evil acts. So it's something that is, for me, I would not advise her to take the monetary settlement. For me,
okay.
No, I wouldn't. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. I see Damilola Dimei also has, I think, her hand up. Let's hear
yes,
Damilola.
Yes.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Madam Dwayne, for the enlightening session. Okay, so I don't think I agree that if she takes the monetary settlement, it means her morality is low or anything. We need to consider where the lady is in her career. You can't compare someone that is a senior manager that is being harassed to a co-member that just left school, that has no track record, that has nothing, that has no career, that is being sexually harassed. Because at that point, the co-member just wants to live her life quietly and just progress with little or no drama. Of course, the senior manager already has a track record and all of that. So, and she has the money and she has the experience. If this executive is as high up there, he's called the money maker for the company, he's going to blacklist her everywhere he has any kind of contact. And everybody on this call that is a woman that has been in the corporate world knows that most of these deals and all of that, they are not being cut and settled in boardrooms. They are being settled in beer parlors, at their children's 1-year-old party, at those kind of joints. So that is where her career will go with this sexual harassment. Now, I won't advise her to take the monetary settlement because, again, that means she's going to expose other people. Yes, I feel like she should leave the organization. If it is an international organization, she should please reach out to the global table, like a big global body, the corporate head office, and ask, and report this person, money maker or not. He should not be in that organization. He's making the workplace toxic and fearful for all the other ladies that are there. But if she does, again, this is me talking from somebody that went to school and all of that. And I'm like, okay, I have prospects. If I don't have this job, I have another job. Or if it's someone that comes from a very, very humble background and our whole mommy is saying, oh, take the money and leave the organization and you to shut up and you to lose weight so that your bum is not so big. Those kind of conversations happen in a lot of homes, right? She can take the monetary settlement and it does not mean her morality is out of the door. It will be something she will write in a book 20 years from now. And that executive will no longer be a moneymaker. He would just be a bad brand. And that young person or the senior manager or whoever, the woman, is going to be the one that will bring down that brand. Because if I put myself in that shoe, yes, I might not have the money and the clout to bring down the executive now, but just give me a couple of years. I will have that money and I will have that clout and I will have that connect to bring down that executive and that organization. Thank you.
So bide your time, essentially. All right. Olawale, you have something to contribute? I see your hand is up.
Yes. When the first speaker spoke, and I wanted to add a thought to it, I wish I'm still going to add anyway. But Damilola twisted it. But I will maintain my stand. What was coming to my mind in this is, what is the definition of when maybe police or whoever that they want to talk about law, they say aiding and abetting. The moment that lady takes that money and keeps quiet, if something happens in the future and there's a reference to it, though she could be saved, maybe if she has a good lawyer because of her position, but her attitude is just she has aided and abetted, whether you like it or not. So It's quite challenging and tough because maybe she's down there on the ladder, you understand? But as it were, when you stand for something, your position shouldn't be to determine how you stand for something. The fact that you're not at the top does not mean you should. I quite understand that she should be wise in order to save her head. But then, if she signs it and takes the money, she has aided and abetted. That's my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think Albert wants to say something. I think we made this with the last contribution on this subject. Albert, please go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Good evening. Yes, we can hear you, Albert.
All right. So I think I would just still want to go with Idoni George. If the lady decides to take the money, like Larry said, it is aiding and abetting, and also the fact that she has allowed for it's a compromise, because that act will continue in that organization. Whoever that is perpetuating it will just see it as it's business as usual. We'll pay our way through, and it continues, and people will continue to fall victim. There was there's an experience of a young girl about 7 years ago that I know of. She was raped, and the moment she was raped, she didn't say anything. She didn't even talk to her parents. She went straight to the police station to report the case, and immediately the police swung into the situation. They arrested the guy, and the DPO then, he insisted. He said he was going to see personnel. They took the girl to the hospital to confirm immediately when that thing happened, to confirm that yes, it was actually a rape case. They did all the medical, and the guy was immediately transferred to the state CID at Adekunle, and the man followed it through to ensure that the guy was. So now all of this, for me, it doesn't matter how much you collect, even if you collect the money. Tomorrow something can happen, and you have compromised on your value to say that yes, I can be bought, I can be paid for it. But you taking that step to speak out and say no, enough is enough. Even if this hasn't happening, it is time for it to stop. You can decide not even to collect any money, even if the company is going to compensate you. You can decide to say no, I'm not getting compensation from you, but this act has to stop. If you do that, it's going to stop every occurrence, every future of occurrence of such that may want to happen in the organization. That's just my own contribution.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for your contributions, and you can see how interesting it is on the different perspectives that we brought into it, even taking the context into consideration. And I think this also sort of distinguishes between when something is an ethic or morally driven, or something is a value. It may be that the value of this particular young lady is, you know what, it's better to get something out of this terrible situation than to get nothing. And she decided to go, and maybe what she's resolved is that if somebody else had the courage to face the man on this issue, she'd be happy to support the person, or she could take the road of no way, I can't allow other people to go through this, etc., etc. So this also shows how the person involved would rate their values in this specific situation. And at this point, I'd like to say thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you here. I invite you, please, to connect with me online. You can send me an email, send me a message, and we can have a conversation. Olaniwaju, I hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Toyin. It's been very spot on. I want to say a big thank you to you. I forgot to mention at the start of this session that other than people on this Zoom call, there are people joining us because we're actually live streaming on YouTube as well. So there are people out there. And having said that, I also want to say that I am not surprised that this room is not filled to capacity. Why do I say that? Because we're talking about values. Something interesting came up when you started, when you said people should use values, and I saw integrity, blah, blah, and I love the way you handled it. Sincere apologies. I'm not trying to say somebody is this or somebody is that, but how many of us actually we walk the talk when we talk about integrity that we actually listed. So, but thank God that's why we are having this session. During the course of the session, Esther Ibi, I don't know whether she's still on the call. She wrote a question on the chat, and that's what I want for you to actually discuss. She said, what do you do in a situation when the leaders of the company feels they are above board? They don't exhibit values, but they demand it from you, from employees. So what should, I presume bosses and HR, so what should HR do in a situation that leaders feel they're above board, and now they're saying employees should live by the values which they themselves don't actually live by? Thank you.
Okay, I think that question was possibly answered during the session. You address what is within your control, right? What is within your control, but it's going to be an uphill task for that HR professional, because if you are saying that this is what we ought to do here, or this is what we do here, and then the person you're talking to points to leadership and says, but the people who should care more than I do about getting this particular thing done here are not doing it. So why should I bother? It's going to be a challenge for that HR to maintain any sort of cultural consistency within that organization. So what I would say is tackle what is within your control. What can you do? It's going to take a lot of emotional intelligence. It's going to take a lot of interpersonal skills in terms of persuasion. It's going to take a lot of you appealing to their higher selves or their moral selves, their bigger selves, so to speak, that if you're not doing it for the organization, do it for yourself. And it gets tougher, especially when it looks like there's no reward for them doing this thing, which is why I said that managers themselves in their little silos can create some certain awards. I'd like to say, for instance, that if somebody does something that demonstrates a value that the organization claims that they embrace, even though they don't, it's just a question of asking for permission from the CEO. Sir, this person did this good thing. I thought that just as a reward, since we can't give money, and you know how some leaders feel about money, if you don't want to spend it, they don't need to. Since we're not giving money, but it'd be nice to just send an email to everybody celebrating this person, saying, this person did this thing, and we should just, let them know they did this thing well. I know that recognition, even if it doesn't come with financial reward, goes a long way with some people, yeah? And if you are so inclined as an individual, you may want to say, let me use my personal funds to do something nice for this person, not a lot. Maybe you want to give them 1,000 naira recharge card, or you want to sponsor them to a movie, but or something just to show how much you appreciate what the person did. Now, the question is, I'm not the owner of the organization. Why am I the one going through this thing? But you recognize that you are leaving a legacy for yourself when you demonstrate the values you espouse. And like I always say in my articles, I say, your boss isn't the only person watching. You really don't know when these seeds you're sowing are going to germinate. And you and I know that it never just ends in one place. Because something is the way it is now doesn't need to always be like that. So don't treat as permanent what is only temporary, right? So in summation, I would say, address what is within your control and do your best with what is within your circle of influence, but focus on what is within your circle of control. That's what I would say to that particular question. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I wouldn't know whether there are other people that want to ask questions or maybe a comment or two. I could see some senior HR people on the call. I don't want to put them on the spot by mentioning names, but I don't know whether anyone would like to put an insight or maybe a reference or something that will make us to actually seal the learning before we call it a day. And okay, someone wrote some, I'll read the question, but while I'm reading that, I just want to tell you that because, most of our sessions are actually HRCI certified. For today's session, it has 3 recertification units. So you need to actually submit your attendance because that will be first for verification. And then there is a link also for the attendance. The link is here on the chat. It's been dropping every now and then. Same is also the link for the certificate. So you can just click on the link and do the needful. Okay. So while that is ongoing, there's a question from YouTube. Like I told you, mentioned earlier that we are streaming on YouTube as well. Adijat Ismail wrote, so what do you do in a situation where the CEO is being biased and building camp and not team in the organization? So what would you like to say to that?
Wow. Okay, I don't know what she means by a camp. What she means is building loyalists, like people that
like a cabal. I want to believe a cabal.
Say sycophants, yeah, yes men, people that to say hello to themselves. Well, in that particular situation, I don't know that. I think one has to be very wise when you're in that sort of situation, especially if you can't, well, you're not in a position. Okay, let me put it this way. There are 3 things I think will happen. The extreme one is join the cabal and use your influence from within. The second one is be wise and figure out what matters to those individuals and approach them based on that. In his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie said that one of the things that we don't look at when we are talking to people we want to bring over to our side is why should they agree with us? Why should they do what we need them to do? What's in it for them? Okay, so you have to study people to know what matters to them. What is their own value system? When you understand what their values are, then you can speak and persuade them based on their values. So that's a lot of work. And it takes a lot of emotional intelligence and political intelligence on your own part. But it's possible, it's doable, and senior people do it all the time, right? The third option is the easiest option, the low resolution option, which is take your bow from the organization and say, I've done my bit here, but my value system doesn't support me staying continually in this sort of environment. So because of that, I'm going to take a bow and leave this organization, right? So I'm sure there's possibly other options, but those are 3 that I can highlight at this point. But whatever the case may be, if you are still there, then you will have to use wisdom to get your, whether it's a policy or your perspective or the things you want to get through. You've got to use wisdom to get it through. So I think that's how I would answer that particular question. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I want to believe Adijat is okay with that answer. While we're wrapping up, I want to call on a few people just to put icing on the cake. There's no monopoly of knowledge. Seyi Olulade, please, apologies for putting you on the spot. Would you like you to say something as we wrap up on this topic?
Wow. I just wanted to listen. I just wanted to learn. We say, we're shameless learners here. Exactly. There's no heights that you may think you have gotten to, how knowledgeable you think you are. You just have to learn. Toyin, wow. I like to use the word, the phrase, you're a rock star. Thank you for this. And the subject of value is one subject that even in the boardroom that always creates a lot of friction. So it's not something that just has to do with the bottom line or the middle section of the business or executive, even in the boardroom. So value is what threads an organization together. That's what's, it's the air that every organization breathes. You know, you need to breathe to survive, you know, just the way it is with blood in our veins. That's what we, the study of value is so, you can never exhaust it. Isn't exhaustive. It's one thing to say, you know, most times when I go to organizations and I go to their walls and I see the values that the core values they articulate, I smile. So I tell you a personal experience I had recently, and I had to say to the executive vice chairperson, I said, there's no point screaming integrity when even you don't live by integrity. And the EVC was like, everyone was like, is this woman okay? How can you be so bold? I mean, I have to tell the truth. So you set up as a meeting, you talk about integrity, you set up a meeting that we know it's a roster meeting for 9 o'clock. The first time you told them, hold on to 9:30. Well, it's given, anything could happen. It happens the second time, it happens the third time. Why don't you eventually say we are moving this meeting to 9:30 and make sure it happens at 9:30? Now, you set up a roster evaluation, part of the performance management system. And then you're supposed to have an MPR, a monthly business review session, which we also call MPR. And then we're saying, let's, you know, have a specific day of the month so that we know we keep to it. No. I'm the head of the business. It has to be as, and so I'm wondering if at your level you can't practice integrity, then you have no right to ask integrity of the people that work for you. So I mean, we keep asking, what can HR do? I love the fact that you said, if you can't make the change, then you have to take a bow. I've been on this journey of HR since 1996. Wow. And I can tell you that it is never easy. You can never get 100%, you can only try. But one of the things I say to HR practitioners is, at your own level, when you say 8, you make sure you are there by 7:50. Let them see you practice it, whether it's to management, whether it is to your bottom line, your contemporary, whichever, any aspect of your business, whether to vendors and what have you, so that they know that time consciousness is a value for you. Before you know it, even your boss, by the time they see that you are consistent at it, they will shape it. Yeah. It will become natural to them to say, Tony is coming, Tony has called a meeting, let us all go and attend that meeting. Make sure you are there on time. And before you know it, you start making this. So you have to infect those change, take baby steps, but it starts with you. It's easy for us to point at our leaders. It's easy for us to point at the leaders of the organization. It starts with you, trust me. And it is the value you bring to the table. You know, one thing I always say, where you have 1, 2, 3 people, it's a place of value exchange. So it's a superior value that will give way. Consistency is the game. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much, Toyin. Thank you.
Thank you. You've spoken such a big truth in everything that you've said. You've spoken such truth. And I think that people conflate leadership with the lack of accountability.
Oh, yeah.
It means that because I'm at this level now, I really don't need to answer to you anymore because I've paid my dues.
Exactly.
So you know, I paid my dues. But they don't know that the higher you go, the more accountable you need to become.
Thank you.
Because at that point, you need to start replicating yourself in other people.
Yeah. And that's because value is
by example.
Yeah. Value is actually driven from top to bottom, not bottom up.
It is.
All right. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Let me see if I can just take just one more comment, maybe in a 2-3 minutes. Madam Dorothy Tunde Ajala, I see you on the call. I know when we discuss leadership is something that interests you. will you mind saying a word or two? Hello, are you there? Okay, if she's unable to speak.
I'm actually here.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yes, Toyin, well done.
It's here. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. I think you've addressed, the topic quite extensively. I mean, perhaps something I would like to say is that when you have values, they guide you. And when you find yourself in a difficult situation, just like that analogy, the unfortunate analogy you used earlier about the gentleman who was whose value was, making his business more eco-friendly, and unfortunately, he went against his values. But I really do believe that once you are convinced of your values, they should be like a lamp that lights your path. Such that if you ever doubt, if you find yourself in a situation where you're not very sure, search within yourself. Remember your values and let them guide you home. That's just about what I would like to add to it. I think you've done a great job of the topic, and I pray that each of us that have heard you speak tonight, we will go and sit down and actually ask ourselves questions about, and if you already are not sure what your values are, ask yourself, write them down, and as much as possible, let them be the light that guides you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. God bless you for that contribution. Everyone on the call can agree with me that today has been awesome. It's been explosive. It's been inciting, and much more. It's also calling us to action. When people talk about us, when we're not there, what will people say about our values? Not what we write. She mentioned about when you see organizations, you see them put these core values. Meanwhile, they don't live it. But when people talk about us, what will they say about us? So that's just the takeaway from me from this session. I want to say a very big thank you to Oluwatoyin Ipudikan for doing justice to the topic, and also for doing us honor by coming to actually facilitate. There's a slogan here that the word of the word, small work. So there's a tendency we're likely to call you some other time to come and facilitate for us. I want to say thank you to you. Thank you to all our participants that are here. Like I said earlier, and it's been posted, if you like to get a certificate, if you're a member, you pay 2,000 naira. If you're not a member of AHRP, you pay 4,000 naira. AHRP is a not-for-profit entity. The fee we are paying for certificates towards HRCI is the unit that we give out. So there is a cost that we bear. So that's just it. So thank you very much, everyone, once again, as you go. Just watch out on our social media handles, on our Telegram page. There's a lot of things are cooking in the next few weeks. So watch out. I want to say at this junction, so thank you, everyone. Do enjoy the rest of the evening. Bye.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Toyin.
Thank you, Cabot.
Thank you, everyone. How was the day?
Bye.
I trust we had fun.